It's not easy because distractions are designed to feel good in the moment. They give you quick hits of comfort and entertainment without demanding anything in return. But that comfort comes at a cost, the cost of your time, your focus, and your potential. Choosing to disconnect doesn't mean you cut yourself off from the world completely. It means you become intentional about what you allow into your space. You start setting boundaries, clear, non-negotiable limits on what deserves your attention and what doesn't. You stop letting random inputs dictate your mood and your mindset. Instead, you take ownership of what you consume, what you think about, and how you spend your time. At first, this shift can feel uncomfortable. Silence can be intimidating when you're used to constant stimulation. Without distractions, you're left alone with your thoughts. That's something many people try to avoid. But that silence is where clarity lives. It's where you begin to understand what you really want, what's been holding you back, and what needs to change. When you stop seeking validation, you start building something much stronger, self-respect. You begin to do things not because others will notice, but because you know they matter. Your motivation becomes internal instead of external. You don't need applause to keep going, and you don't crumble when it's absent. That kind of mindset is powerful because it makes you consistent, regardless of circumstances. Over time, you'll notice a shift in how you operate. Your focus becomes sharper. Your decisions become clearer. You're no longer jumping from one thing to another, chasing short-term satisfaction. Instead, you're working with purpose, investing your energy into things that actually move you forward. And that's when real progress starts to happen, not in bursts of motivation, but in steady, disciplined effort. Stepping away from distractions and validation isn't about restriction. It's about freedom. It frees up your mind, your time, and your energy for things that truly matter. It allows you to build a life based on your own values instead of someone else's expectation. And once you experience that level of control, you won't want to go back. Because at the end of the day, the biggest difference between those who stay stuck and those who grow isn't talent or luck, it's focus. Something you protect by being intentional about where your attention goes. When you master that, you take the first real step toward becoming the person you've always wanted to be. Talking about your goals can feel productive, but it often creates an illusion of progress. You say what you want to achieve, you share your plans, you imagine the outcome, and for a moment, it feels real. That feeling can be addictive. It tricks your mind into thinking you're already moving forward, even when nothing has actually changed. The danger is that the more you talk, the less urgency you feel to act. You begin to confuse intention with execution. Real transformation begins the moment you stop relying on words and start relying on actions. It's not about how clear your vision sounds or how passionate you seem when you explain it to others. It's about what you do when no one is around to listen. Because that's where the gap is between what you say you want and what you're willing to do for it. There's a reason many people stay stuck in the cycle of planning and talking. Action is uncomfortable. It requires effort, discipline, and consistency. It forces you to confront your limitations and deal with failure. Words, on the other hand, are safe. They cost nothing. You can adjust them, improve them, and present them however you want. But they don't build anything. Focusing on real transformation means shifting your attention from outcomes to processes. Instead of constantly thinking about the end result, you start committing to the daily habits that lead you there. You won't see immediate results, and that can make it easy to question whether your efforts are even worth it. But progress is often happening beneath the surface in ways you can't immediately measure. Every time you follow through on a commitment, you strengthen your ability. It can keep you in a place where nothing changes, where growth is delayed, and where your potential slowly fades into routine. The habits you repeat every day shape the direction of your life. Not the big occasional actions, but the small, consistent ones, the ones you barely think about anymore. If those habits are built around convenience, distraction, or short-term pleasure, they quietly pull you away from the person you're trying to become. And the longer you hold on to them, the harder it becomes to break free. Recognizing what needs to be eliminated requires honesty. Not surface-level awareness, but deep, uncomfortable truth. You have to look at your routines, your environment, and even the people around you, and ask whether they are pushing you forward or keeping you stuck. This isn't about blaming others or external circumstances. It's about taking responsibility for what you allow to stay in your life. Some habits are obvious, wasting time, avoiding responsibility, choosing comfort over effort. Others are more subtle. Procrastination disguised as preparation. Overthinking disguised as caution. Seeking constant entertainment to avoid facing your own thoughts. These patterns don't just waste time. They weaken your ability to act, to focus, and to grow. Breaking away from these habits is not just a physical process, it's mental. You have to rewire the way you respond to discomfort. Because most of these habits exist for one reason. They help you avoid something. May stress, fear, uncertainty, effort. When you remove them, you're forced to face what you've been avoiding. And that's where real change begins. Letting go also applies to influences. The people you spend time with, the content you consume, the conversations you engage in, they all shape your mindset. If you're constantly surrounded by negativity, doubt, or lack of ambition, it becomes difficult to think beyond those limits. Even if you're trying to grow, that environment will pull you back to where it's comfortable. This doesn't always mean cutting people off completely. Sometimes it means creating distance, setting boundaries. Being intentional about how much access certain influences have over your time and energy. Growth requires space, and not everyone or everything deserves a place in that space. There's a cost to this process. You may feel isolated at times. You may miss the ease and familiarity of your old habits. You may even question whether the change is worth it. That's normal, because you're stepping away from what's known into something uncertain. But that uncertainty is where progress lives. One of the biggest mistakes people make is trying to add new positive habits without removing the negative ones first. They try to build discipline while still holding on to distractions. They try to focus while keeping the same environment that causes them to lose focus. But growth doesn't work that way. You can't fill a space that's already cluttered. You have to clear it first. As you begin to eliminate what holds you back, you'll notice something shift. Your time opens up. Your mind feels clearer. Your energy becomes more focused. Tasks that once felt difficult become manageable. Not because they've changed, but because you've removed the resistance that was holding you down. This process is not about perfection. You won't get everything right immediately. There will be moments where old habits resurface, where you slip back into familiar patterns. The key is not to stay there. It's to recognize it quickly, correct it, and keep moving forward. Every time you do that, you weaken the hold those habits have over you. Well, over time, what once felt like a sacrifice begins to feel like strength. You realize that you're no longer controlled by impulses or distractions. You're making choices based on purpose, not convenience. That shift gives you a level of control that most people never experience. In the end, eliminating what holds you back is not about losing something. It's about making room. Making room for focus, for discipline, and for growth. Making room for a version of yourself that isn't limited by the patterns of the past. And once you create that space, you'll find that moving forward becomes not only possible, but inevitable. Isolation has a way of revealing things that constant noise keeps hidden. When you step away from the crowd, from the opinions, from the endless input of other people's lives, you're left with something most people try to avoid: yourself. No distractions, no external validation, no easy escape. Just your thoughts, your habits, your reality. And while that can feel uncomfortable at first, it is one of the most powerful environments for growth. Most people associate being alone with loneliness, but the two are not the same. Loneliness comes from feeling disconnected and empty, while intentional isolation is a choice, a decision to create space for something greater. It's a period where you're not withdrawing out of weakness, but stepping back with purpose. You're choosing to focus, to rebuild, and to grow without interference. In isolation, your attention is no longer divided. You're not constantly reacting to messages, expectations, or comparisons. That mental space allows you to think clearly, to reflect deeply, and to understand what you actually want. Without that clarity, it's easy to live a life shaped by other people's standards instead of your own. This phase also forces you to confront your habits. Without distractions to hide behind, patterns become more visible. You start to see where you waste time, where you make excuses, and where you hold yourself back. It's not always comfortable to face those truths, but it's necessary because you can't change what you refuse to acknowledge. Growth and isolation is built through intentional action. It's not just about being alone, it's about what you do with that time. You begin to invest in yourself, whether it's improving your skills, strengthening your mindset, or building routines that support your goals. These actions may seem small on a daily basis, but over time, they create significant change. One of the biggest advantages of isolation is the freedom to fail without pressure. When you're constantly surrounded by others, there's often a fear of judgment. That fear can stop you from trying, experimenting, or pushing beyond your limits. But when you're alone, that pressure fades. You can make mistakes, learn from them, and adjust without worrying about how it looks to anyone else. This freedom accelerates growth. You become more willing to take risks, to challenge yourself, and to step outside your comfort zone. And with each attempt, successful or not, you gain experience. That experience builds confidence, not the kind that comes from praise, but the kind that comes from knowing you can handle challenges and adapt. Isolation also strengthens your relationship with discipline. Without external structure, you have to create your own. No one is there to remind you, to push you, or to hold you accountable. It's just you and your choices. This is where true self-discipline is developed. When you do what needs to be done, not because someone is watching, but because you decided it matters. There will be moments when this process feels difficult. You may miss the comfort of constant interaction, the ease of distractions, the familiarity or old routine. Doubt may creep in, making you question whether this path is worth it. But those moments are part of the process. They test your commitment and force you to decide whether you're serious about change. Over time, isolation begins to feel less like separation and more like preparation. You start to notice progress, not always in obvious ways, but in how you think, how you act, and how you respond to challenges. You become more focused, more disciplined, and more aware of your direction. It's important to understand that this phase is not permanent. The goal is not to stay isolated forever, but to use this time to build a stronger foundation. You're preparing yourself for the moment when you step back into the world, not as the same person, but as someone who has grown, someone who has developed the strength and clarity to move forward with purpose. When that moment comes, the difference will be clear. You won't need to seek attention or validation because your confidence will come from within. You won't be easily distracted because you've trained your focus. You won't be uncertain about your direction because you've taken the time to define it. Isolation, when used intentionally, becomes a powerful tool. It gives you the space to grow without interference, the freedom to fail without judgment, and the clarity to build a life that aligns with who you truly want to become. And once you've experienced that level of growth, you'll understand that stepping away was never about losing connection. It was about finding yourself. There comes a moment when all the quiet work, all the discipline, all the sacrifices begin to take shape. It doesn't happen overnight, and it doesn't arrive with an announcement. It builds layer by layer, until one day the results are no longer invisible. This is the point where you reappear, not by forcing attention, but by becoming impossible to ignore. Reappearing is not about showing off or proving people wrong. If that's your motivation, you're still tied to external validation. True transformation changes that. You no longer feel the need to explain yourself or seek approval because your results speak in a way words never could. There's a quiet confidence that comes with knowing the work you've put in, and that confidence doesn't need noise to be real. The person who reappears is not the same one who disappeared. The mindset is different. The habits are different. The standards are higher. You've spent time building discipline, eliminating distractions, and focusing on what truly matters. That process reshapes you from the inside out. It's not just about what you achieve. It's about who you become in the process. One of the most noticeable changes is consistency. Where you once relied on motivation or bursts of energy, you now operate with structure and control. You show up, you execute, and you follow through. Not occasionally, but regularly. That consistency creates results that are stable, not temporary. It becomes clear that what you've built is not a phase, it's a lifestyle. People may start to notice the difference, but their recognition is no longer the goal. In fact, it becomes secondary. You're not driven by attention anymore, you're driven by purpose. The focus shifts from being seen to continuing the work that got you here. Because you understand something most people overlook. The moment you stop putting in the effort is the moment everything starts to fade. Reappearing with real results also brings responsibility. It's easy to become comfortable once you start seeing progress, to slow down, to relax, to believe that you've done enough. But growth doesn't stop unless you choose to stop. The same discipline that helped you build yourself is the discipline that will help you maintain and elevate that growth. Without it, even the strongest results can weaken over time. Another important shift is how you handle challenges. Before, obstacles may have felt overwhelming or discouraging. Now they are part of the process. You've developed resilience through your journey, and that resilience allows you to face difficulties without losing direction. You don't panic, you don't quit. You adjust and keep moving. That ability becomes one of your greatest strengths. Reappearing is also a moment of realization. You begin to see how far you've come, not just in achievements, but in mindset. The things that once distracted you no longer have the same pull. The habits that once held you back have been replaced. The doubts that once slowed you down have been challenged and reduced. You've created distance between who you were and who you are now. But even with that progress, there is no finish line. The version of you that you become is not the final version. It's just a higher level. There are still goals to reach, still areas to improve, still challenges ahead. The difference now is that you have the tools, the discipline, and the mindset to keep evolving. Reappearing doesn't mean stepping back into your old environment unchanged. It means engaging with the world differently. You carry yourself with more focus, more clarity, and more control. You're selective with your time, your energy, and your attention. You understand their value because you've experienced what it takes to build something meaningful. There is also a level of quiet pride that comes with this stage. Not arrogance, not ego, but a deep sense of respect for the effort you've invested. You know what it took to get here. The early mornings, the late nights, the moments of doubt, the discipline when it was difficult. That journey becomes part of you and it shapes how you move forward. In the end, reappearing stronger is not about a single moment of recognition. It's about becoming someone whose actions consistently reflect their goals. Someone who doesn't rely on promises or words, but on results and follow through. When you reach that point, you don't have to announce your return. The work you've done would make it clear, and that is the real power of disappearing for a while, not to escape, but to rebuild. So when you come back, you're not just different. You're better, stronger, and prepared for everything that comes next. So take the time you need. Step away from the noise, the pressure, the need to be seen, and commit fully to the process of becoming. Accept the silence, embrace the struggle, and stay loyal to the work, even when no one is watching. Because the version of you that emerges from that journey won't need to chase attention or prove anything to anyone. It will stand on discipline, built through effort, shaped by resilience, and defined by result. And when that moment comes, you won't just return, you'll arrive as someone who earned every inch of who they become.